Hello, my name is Wesley Ducote. I am the pianist for the Rossini Club. I'm so happy today to be joined by Howard Frazin, Boston-based composer. Um, he is sort of the big subject of a portrait concert we're putting on August 20th in the Athenaeum at 6:30 p.m. And the concert is called From Then Till Now, which is the same name as the song cycle, the big song cycle of Howard or Howie, should I call you? Um, his big song cycle that we're presenting, along with many of his influences. So, Howie, if you wouldn't mind, it's so happy to have you on. So great to have you on. I'm wondering if you could just tell us maybe even a little bit more about yourself that you think is important or related to this concert.
About me personally?
Yeah, yeah. We'll get into the more specific questions. I have more specific questions, but I'm curious if there's anything that you want to add to that.
Well, I mean, I'm honored to be a part of a Rossini Club concert in part because of my connection to Nick Davies, who founded the presenting organization. He's an old student of mine. I've known him since he was either 15 or 16 years old. Um, and I'm thrilled to have an opportunity to be a part of it without question. That's um, I've always treated all my students, no matter how young they started with me, as potential colleagues,
Mhm.
and most of them have become musicians and composers still into their 30s and 40s, and um, I continue to work with a lot of them as in collaborating in presenting music, uh, uh, and it's one of the most profound things about uh, being a musician. Uh,
Mhm.
we don't get paid a lot, but we are a true community, um, and yeah, I'm very thankful for that. And you mentioned that you're presenting my pieces with Ravel and Fauré.
Yes.
Um, this is I'm profoundly intimidated by that. Um, I know Fauré some. I know Ravel. Well, I was going to say a lot, but actually only some. Ravel's one of those composers that I have pieces that I know, but I've only heard a couple times because whenever I hear him, um, I can't write for a little bit. And in fact, I'm looking, you can't see it, but in the corner of my studio is a painting of Ravel that a friend of mine did. He's upside down, in part because when he was sitting right side up, he just has a little bit of a, oh, really look on his face. So every time I go and I play something and I look over in his direction,
For
I just
judgment.
feel this withering disdain or whatever. I don't try to sound like him.
Mhm.
Um, uh, I think uh, my musical sensibilities maybe are connected, but that was before I even knew who he was.
Right.
And in that sense, I guess I could mention. Um, Unlike Nick and a lot of my students who started studying with me when they were young, I didn't have any musical training
Mhm.
um, until I was in my early 20s. I was an English major in college, um, and I started goofing around at the piano because there was a piano in the dorm. If people walked in while I was playing, I would, and I couldn't read or anything, I was just improvising. People walked in, I would immediately stop.
Mhm.
Um, Eventually, I got enough courage to continue playing a little, and people would come over and say, "What's that you're playing?" Uh, and um, I was intrigued by this. Eventually, one person said you should take a composition class. They put music in front
Right.
of me too. Of course, I couldn't read it, and somebody said you should take a composition class. And I only got involved in composition sort of in this circuitous way because I thought, well, that will get me to learn how to read music
Right.
because I didn't really know what it meant to be a composer.
Already, just from that information, um, has given me so much more context than I had. Now, I mean, I met you last summer. You came to a concert that Rossini Club had put on. But before that, of course, I'd heard your name many times from Nick, who spoke highly, not only of you as a teacher and as a colleague and as a composer. And he was so excited for this concert in particular because he thinks so highly, especially of the way you write art song. And maybe that is sort of the connection, more than anything, is those musical sensibilities between, maybe you and Fauré and Ravel. In sort of choosing some of these pieces, I thought that I was sort of sensing some of that. And in particular, there's something wonderful. I mean, we have so much more ground to cover, but just off the bat, I'd say that there's something really nice about, at least from the bit of playing and reading I've done so far. There's like the way a lot of Ravel is just sort of exactly what's needed. There's not a lot of noise, not a lot of extraneous doubling of materials. Everything is exactly what needs to be there and nothing more. Um, which is great. It's great for me to read, and it's also as a performer, it focuses everything. And there's some other composers that I really love that are good at that, and it actually kind of makes their music really quite difficult. Because suddenly, it's musically much more focused, and you have to get everything so refined for a performance. So maybe one of the first questions I was wondering about when I was going through this, there's a couple things here. But the first of which is the text that you chose. Now, having worked with some composers, I feel like a lot of them opt for more obscure poems or passages. And right off the bat, we have, some of these writers I don't know so well, but, some of the William Blake, Langston Hughes, William Butler Yeats, E. E. Cummings, and it's not only just that it's them, but it's that their most quintessential texts, like E. E. Cummings' In Just and William Blake's The Tiger, and there's something really rather courageous about taking on those texts. And I'm curious what, not as a how dare you think that, but rather, what was the sort of decision, process. And maybe that's related to other factors, but it's fascinating that, and also that it goes into a song cycle that seems to encompass such large themes. So maybe that was part of it, that you picked such focused and essential poems for that reason.
Okay, so as you probably know from Nick, um, uh, my primary teacher was Dominic Argento. Um, and before meeting him, I really, like I said, I was an English major in college. And the few times I attempted to set some texts before meeting uh, uh, Argento, my feeling was, why? Why, you know, I loved great poetry. Why screw it up with a song? And on top of that, uh, I not only did I not uh, play music as a child, I can count the number of classical concerts I went to on one hand,
Hmm.
and uh, I can pretty much guarantee you none of them had a an opera singer, you know.
Right.
And coming from the Midwest, opera singing is it's like it's the twirly lady or whatever with the horns. Um, and so that wasn't in my experience. Um, Furthermore, because words are so important to me, the idea of vocal music seemed incredibly distracting.
Hmm.
um, from the abstraction of expression. Um, Now, with all that, one of the first, maybe the most powerful teaching lesson, one of the most powerful lessons I ever had from Argento. I was setting some Thomas Lovell Beddoes, and I was very excited. I was a slow. I composed slowly, but for some reason I brought in a lot of material this one week. And Argento, his usual way of going about doing things, he'd sit there at his desk for maybe 15 minutes, silently smoking a cigarette and going through my score. And then he might go to the piano. He might kick back his chair and ask me a question. So he goes through this whole thing. I'm very proud that I'd done so much work. And he goes, "What's your point of view?" And I was kind of taken aback. I didn't know what he meant. And then I started to realize, oh, you mean what's going on in the poem? And I had this idea of what was happening in the poem. It was very clear. Um, and I told him this idea, and he goes, "Okay, I don't know if I agree with you. That's a point of view. I don't know if I agree with you, but you haven't done that." And I went back and I completely I threw out half of it, rewrote it, clarifying what my point of view was about the text, and it turned into really the first my first piece that was a not a mature work, but it was the beginning of being a serious composer. It was bigger than the whole was bigger than all the parts,
Right.
and it had to do with that expressive intention, and that I was trying to create musical materials and dramatic structure that was you know engaged in that expressive intention.
Right.
So to me, what I got from that was it's not about setting the poem, it's about setting a specific experience of that poem.
Hmm.
That allowed me to start, you know, the beginnings of actually taking serious the idea of being a vocal composer.
Mm.
The other thing I found really helpful about being a vocal composer, and this is true of, when you look at any of the composers that you play, it seems that at least early on in almost all of their careers, they wrote songs.
Right.
What's interesting about songs is that the text gives you a very particular dramatic structure and very specific expressive possibilities
Hmm.
because of the words. And then also because of the words, and that they're sung, you have to articulate a certain aspect of that expression purely through melody.
Right.
Those are all the things that I think any good composition teacher has to help their student work through. So, and then on top of that, if you're working with a good poet, you're collaborating with a great artist.
Right.
It's a very powerful opportunity.
Right.
Now, in terms of the texts themselves, um, I started 18 years ago now, I think, something called Word Song. Word Song chooses texts that by and large are familiar to audiences. And we do that intentionally
Hmm.
because Word Song is about trying to have a conversation about um, artistic, what do we call it? I think that everybody has a strong artistic sensibility. They get music without anybody telling them
Right.
how to listen. There's been a lot of arts organizations that are all about curating things and basically trying to fill listeners and audiences with oh, you need to know this and this and this, and
Right.
then you'll understand more. Um, Word Song was saying no. Actually, the only reason art has such a significant function as a cultural tool in society is that you don't need to know anything.
Right.
I mean, it might, it's sort of like going to a baseball game. Is it cool if you know what all the statistics mean? Sure.
Right.
But fundamentally, we go to a baseball game because it brings us all together to all, feel some, communal sense of something.
And the drinking.
And the drinking.
You know.
Exactly. Anyway, so we pick if we're picking texts because we're trying to instill in people that they know what they're about.
Right.
Picking texts that I think a lot of people don't know how to talk about music necessarily. It's abstract, it's complicated.
But even if they can just express opinions and feelings, and it's all about getting them to engage with it.
Exactly. And so if you have a poem that they're familiar with, they're much more likely to more quickly get to that point. Oh, well, I know this.
Right. Right.
Um, so the reason for the picking those particular texts is exactly that. Is that I think classical music, contemporary classical music on its own terms is already a little bit of a foreign substance. And if I can give them some, I've always found, and this is true of all the composers I love, Prokofiev's a really good example of it. He takes things which are familiar and presents them in unfamiliar ways.
Right.
I also love Poulenc. He takes things which are he presents very familiar. So Prokofiev presents unfamiliar things in familiar ways, like the classical symphony, where Poulenc takes something which is, you'd think, oh, I know what this is, a major chord, and he presents it in a completely unfamiliar way with unusual phrasing and unresolved resolutions, all that kind of stuff. To me, that's where things get interesting, when you play around with this tension between the familiar and the unfamiliar.
Mm-hmm.
So presenting texts with contemporary music,
Right.
familiar texts in an unfamiliar way.
Right.
That's where that's coming from. So all of that has nothing to do with the cycle itself, and everything to do with a larger vocal music project, which I've been doing for almost 2 decades now.
Right. But it does explain, why these familiar texts, why these sort of quintessential texts that maybe other composers would shy away from. But it's clear the sort of reverence you have for this process, this collaboration.
Oh yeah, and just speak really clear about the collaboration. I have not picked a single text. None of those were texts that I had.
Oh, you're talking about the word song.
And the texts from this particular.
Oh, really?
Yeah, none of them. Part of what Word Song does is, and you saw this in your experience, Tom and I basically come together and we say, to performers and other composers, what are you interested in?
Right.
And all our job is to create a sense of coalition and community.
Mm-hmm.
We're not looking to tell people you need to set this or you need to set that.
Right.
So I've never picked any of the texts. I like these texts, but I wouldn't necessarily have chosen them on my own.
Right, right. Well, and especially you having the background as the English major, of course, having access to all sorts of certainly obscure and, it's just troves, I'm sure, of texts and poems and passages and whatnot. Well, then the follow-up question I have right off of that is so. Of course, I see that I don't know the exact timeline of this, but this particular you call it a songbook collection uh,
Yeah,
spans from 1996 to 2023, which is yeah, that's a lot of time. Let me, if I could do the math, maybe. Of course, I can never do the math on command. It'd be like 27 years. Uh, according to this, at least the publication info. 1996 to 2023, wouldn't that be 27 years? That's a long time. And the question is, with these texts, and you said you didn't pick all of them, but rather basically, how did they come together to form this set? At what point did you decide potentially, by 2023 or somewhere even before then, that this was kind of the structure of the whole thing?
sure, sure. So, okay, so similar to what we talked about a little bit in terms of um, Rossini Club, uh, great music is created through collaboration.
Right.
Um, uh, and I would say, I mean, the collaborations between composers and performers, amongst performers themselves, the intense, intimate connection between audiences and performers. I mean, it's all. Sometimes I think that audiences don't realize how significant a role they play in performance.
Right.
And particularly post uh, um, during the pandemonium pause, there was something incredibly unfulfilling about making music isolated
Right.
for a screen. It's a very, very different thing. Um, because so much of what you do, and I've, heard you play, you're responding to this subtle communication that goes on
Mhm.
between an audience and you feel it.
Yeah.
You feel it. It's part of what we do. It's part of your skill is, the way you can wiggle your fingers, but the other part is a sensitivity to a room,
Hmm.
you know? And which is remarkable. So, early, fairly early on, I've had some incredible experiences, collaborative experiences with performers.
Hmm.
And the only reason I've written as much vocal music as I have is because of a collection of great performers.
Right.
One of them is my friend Krista River.
Hmm.
She's on the recording that you've
Right.
heard. The pianist that she's working with, Linda Osborne, another person who's, I mean, so much of my music has been premiered by her.
Right.
Um, it's almost it's complicated because I give her, I think one of the biggest challenges of being a composer, in contrast to, somebody who's in the
Hmm.
rep has been done. It's been edited a gazillion times and it's been played so
There's
many times.
recordings that teachers have even passed down. Oh well, my great teacher, grand teacher, studied with uh, Josephi or any of these Carl McCulley or it's Liszt, Franz. It goes back to Franz Liszt. This is what he always said to do here at this moment.
Exactly.
And
It's
you don't have that luxury.
it's an oral tradition, and the hardest thing about something that gets added to that tradition is, well, in Mozart's time, most of the music that was played on a concert would have been new.
Right.
This idea of kind of museifying things is more recent.
Hmm.
Um, and because of it, um, performers and listeners are not they they're not used to the fact that it takes a while to get to know
Yes.
somebody.
Right.
And what's really great about working with uh, um, extended collaborations is you start to know who they are.
Right.
The composers, you start to, it's like, yeah, I've seen that before. I know what that means. Um, uh, it's not so much a question of style as voice. You understand the voice.
Right.
And then for me, if I'm writing for somebody, I also understand what they're looking for in the way that I'm writing it.
Right.
Um, so I've known Krista for almost the length of the time of from
Right.
1993. It's little bit after that. I met Krista through another singer, Sarah Pelletier, and then Sarah introduced me to Krista. So the very early songs in this cycle
Are
premiered by Sarah. There's a couple other songs that are premiered by Aaron Engerbrecht, and then I think all the rest were premiered by Krista. Aaron is also a great friend of Krista's, and that's how I met Aaron. So basically, all of these songs were in various ways, some of them directly, most of them directly, connected to Krista River, and the other ones were connected to Krista through her friends.
right.
And Krista is she's she's probably no, I won't say how old she is, but she's
You're not
getting.
supposed to do that.
I know, but we've known each other for over well over 20 years. Um, she's at the absolute top of her game,
Hmm.
but I also know that at some point, maybe in 5 years or something, or 10 years, that we won't be in the same place. And I really wanted to create a project where I could take all of these songs that were single songs that were many of them written for word song and a few not, um, and somehow bring them together. That's why I call it a song collection, not a
Question.
song
Right.
cycle. Um, and I wanted to bring them together for one voice type and write them so that Krista could sing all of them.
Hmm.
And then other people might consider all of them. And as I was thinking about it, I didn't put all of my work that I've written between 93 and or 97. Was it 93 or 97? I can't remember.
96.
Yeah, 96 and
2023
2023.
was the last one. Yeah.
Um, but I started noticing that there were these groupings that would go well together, which is where the subtitles come from.
Hmm.
And uh, yeah, so I mean that's sort of how it came into being,
Right.
and it was through a recording project with Krista.
Yeah, and it's been helpful, certainly that so this concert that we're going to be putting together is also a further collaboration, especially in terms of sort of what works for sort of presenting side by side. Now we're preserving all the songs that are in each chapter essentially, and those are memory, dream, and reflection. And the idea was to find um, music that is perhaps thematically related or even musically related that then also provides a great flow to the concert. And then in my case, sort of trying to find or search for an arc. So it does feel like we take a journey through the remainder of the concert. And I certainly found some kinship, at least since Foray. Um, is so well known as, I mean, not, I think his piano music's lovely, but certainly as a writer of art song. You go to any conservatory and any of the voice students will certainly, if they're playing a set of French art song, Fauré is going to be in it, if not the entire set, at least in my experience as a staff accompanist. And then Ravel, certainly, I'm finding a relationship um, in the actual. It's certainly with the piano works, the writing between his and your works, and again those the sensibilities of sort of only the exact things that would be necessary. Now, certainly Ravel's music can become quite complex, but still the layers are have only what they need. Um, hmm.
Well, from just
Well, we didn't get to talk yet quite about, because I did send you, and this is sort of off the record, but I did send you an email, and I don't know if you got it yesterday. I've been finally had time to look at these things. I didn't know if you had any thoughts on the order or the pieces that had been suggested so far.
I mean, I was just my cursory look was, wow, this is awesome. It's really interesting.
Hmm.
Um, uh, I feel like you're 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 thinking like a composer.
Hmm.
Uh, you're the one thing I would do. I mean, I don't know if you've done it yet. There is a great article um, by Edgar Allan Poe um, that Nick knows from when he was a kid because I gave it to him. I gave it to him because Argento gave it to me.
Hmm.
Argento gave it to me because Ravel read it in translation and said he learned more about composing from this article than any other teacher he ever worked with.
He
It's a
would say something like that, though. But go
he,
ahead.
but it's true. I mean, once you read this and you see how he puts things together, it's a he read it in translation by Baudelaire. It's Edgar Allan Poe's The Philosophy of Composition, and basically, I mean, he takes the point to an extreme, but it's very much a kind of thinking about the compositional process from a structural point of view,
Right.
work backwards. You can't tell a joke unless you know the punchline.
Right. Right.
And Argento was very clear about that. And I think that's part of where the clarity that maybe you pick up on in some of the work I've done, if it is clear, is that I definitely I work hard to reverse engineer,
Hmm.
where I'm looking for, you know, what is my expressive intentions, and then what materials and what structure best clarify those intentions.
Right.
So it's often a kind of slightly backwards approach.
Right.
And with that in mind, I might suggest to you, I didn't look closely at all the things you had done, but just take a look and ask yourself, how do you want people to feel when they get to the end of this?
Right.
And have you achieved, because that's, if, I recently, I was never a big Britain fan. I don't know if I still am, but Argento was a huge Britain fan for
Hmm.
lots of reasons. And I recently saw one of his church operas or whatever. They're like these they're not oratorio.
Right.
I don't know what they're called, but passion plays. They're passion
Hmm.
plays. Um, there's a kind of crudity about the way things are being presented,
Hmm.
but as the piece unfolds, you just get pulled in more and more and more, and everything. It's as if everything is being revealed. It's a little bit like I don't know if you've read any Dostoevsky. You think it's a shaggy dog story,
Right.
and you're wondering what the heck is he talking about, and then 400 pages in, everything he's presented had significance behind it in some way.
Right. Right.
Poe actually talks about
Well, his short story is a great example of that. And I read, I don't know if I had a book of his short stories, with also with these amazing pen, sort of line illustrations. But I remember an English teacher in high school talking about, I can't remember the three things, but I remember two of them was brevity and intensity.
yep.
I can't remember what the third thing was. That he said all short stories needed his sort of understanding of writing and maybe it's in the article about composition.
Oh yeah, he takes apart the Raven
Right.
and he explains his compositional process behind it.
Hmm.
It is not at all what you think it is.
Hmm.
I think the first thing he wrote was like the the I can't remember how it works in the poem itself, but it's when everything changes from being realistic to being metaphorical.
Right.
He wrote that stanza first before he wrote anything else.
Right.
And then he said, whatever happens before, if it's better than this, I'm going to have to chuck some of it. And Argento used to say that all the time. He would say to me, save it for another piece, Howie.
Right.
Which was, it was tough.
Mm-hmm.
But it also meant that I then, over the years, I have a pile of stuff that's potential ideas for working, somewhere else because
Right.
they couldn't be used in this particular thing.
Mm-hmm.
But it's very directed. Um, I felt this way about the Britain that again, by the time you get to the end, there's a kind of a sensibility about it that overwhelms you,
Mm-hmm.
regardless of what the surface, ins and outs. Is that the most beautiful melody? Is that the most beautiful harmony? It doesn't matter
Mm-hmm.
because we hear what he's talking about.
Right.
And I think particularly in the times that we're in when there's so much obsession with the surface of things,
Right.
we need to look behind uh, uh, our world and see where the real true connections lie. I think it's one of the most powerful things about what we do as musicians because well, here's something interesting. I don't know if you remember this or not when you were a kid, but there was a time when all of us, if we were sad about something that just happened on the playground, we
Right.
come in from recess, and we're 5, 6 years old, we'll just burst into tears in front of the whole class.
Yeah.
And then in about third or fourth grade, you stop doing that because you knew that we do not present private emotions in a public situation.
Right.
What makes what we do so profound is that we are dealing with private feeling in a communal environment.
Yeah.
It's one of the few, I think a lot of the rituals about classical music, it's not so much about being hoity-toity. It's
Mm-hmm.
about creating a sense of ritual so
Right.
that people feel comfortable about allowing themselves into an experience that is outside of what we normally do.
Right.
And when you feel, intimate feelings of joy, sadness, whatever, and you're sitting there with a bunch of strangers, this is profound
Yeah.
because, if you're gathering your audience together, right, they're a swath of humanity. They're not just one kind of person. Hopefully, there are all kinds of
Yeah.
people that might not be able to. If you ask them to talk in words, they wouldn't have anything in common, and
Right.
yet they can feel the person, five, rows away, feeling the same thing they're feeling while they're feeling it.
Mm-hmm.
And at least for a moment, we are together.
Yeah.
We have a sense of community. And more than anything else, I think right now, in times like these, our function as, ambassadors for this cultural tool it's huge, absolutely huge, in my opinion.
Yeah. Valerie, you need to take all of that. That's the bit. Sorry, I don't mean to make, but that was great. That was
That was great.
fantastic.
That was great. That was
That
awesome.
was amazing.
Yeah.
I don't know that there's a wrap up to this. It's really been great talking to you, Howie. I mean, I didn't know any of this stuff about I mean, and and these were pretty, I don't know, I don't necessarily think they were like amazing questions. There's already so much material there and you're ready to speak on it, so thoroughly and also so generally about, extrapolating to your own sort of philosophy about the world and art, the role of art in it. Um, and it's definitely given me a lot more to think about. And I also might also, I'll look at the programming again now with what you said, not only now, but also after reading Edgar Allan Poe's article. Um, but thank you so much for sharing so much and giving us so much context and a lot of background, I think, I was going to ask what maybe, even though you're not programming the concert, what you might want an audience to take away from hearing so much of this songbook collection. But I think you've already said a lot of your own philosophy about collaboration with audiences and their role in this whole craft and art form. So,
Well, I mean, I think it's just as the few things I noticed about your presentation, which I love, is the last thing that I present is the last thing that is the most recent that I wrote.
right.
Came from well, it's interesting. The musical materials came from around the time that I was just trying to hang on to my life during the pandemic isolation.
Mhm.
The text was the Yeats text. He wrote that in the previous pandemic, 100 years before, just after his pregnant wife survived influenza.
Mhm.
And there's also just so much in it
Right.
that is so connected in emotional terms
Mhm.
to what's going on right now.
Mhm.
It's not choosing sides. It's just
Right.
it's defining what we're all struggling with. This is so powerful. And then to move from that, I would definitely not want to present anything after Boulanger just basically drops the microphone.
Right.
It's so beautiful, and it's the last thing she ever wrote.
Mhm.
She died. She was dictating that to her sister on her deathbed. It's also significant because her sister. I mean, I'm a composer. It's an incredibly important part of my life. I'm also a composition teacher. Um, it's I would not have been able to write the last piece that I wrote without all of the experiences I had leading up to that, and a lot of that was uh, students like Nick giving me the opportunity to live through and help sit with a compositional process from so many of my students
Mhm.
who have become serious composers. And, you know, we wouldn't have Nadia Boulanger if it weren't for the fact that, her connection to her sister,
Mhm.
and so it just, there's a lot there that feels very, very important and very significant and very real, um, and not pedantic at all, which is great. And I have to say, I mean, in working with you and Valerie and seeing what you guys are doing, there is going to need to be a new generation of performers who understand what it means to be an artist,
Mhm.
because it much more difficult in these times. I walk in the halls of the New England Conservatory. There's just so much of this, entrepreneurial that some of the institutions themselves have forgotten
Right.
what the function is, and I think that what you're doing in creating this concert series, you're not just trying to, uh, how do we push our careers forward?
Right.
I really do believe that you're trying to figure out how do we reconnect music to audiences, and that's it's just so important. And I know that that's a difficult thing to do right now because there's so many forces that are sort of telling you to do something else.
Right.
So thank both of you for doing this. This is very important.
Again, Howie, it has been so great having you on to speak about your music. I mean, just about everything, your philosophy. We're so excited, especially now getting all that context. to present From Then Till Now in concert on August 20th at 6:30 p.m. at the Nantucket Athenaeum in the Great Hall.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.